You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. You can follow me on Twitter at Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter at Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, on Spotify, on Google Podcasts. Wherever you get podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened. They want to know why and how. Today on the show for Expert Tuesday, my pal and America's guest, Jason Hirschhorn, my co-founder at The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to at theleap.substack.com. And of course, just an all-around good guy, a smart guy, and his video debut. So be kind. And we are going to get into everything related to week 1, any lingering thoughts we have there before we push forward into week 4. Did I say week 1? Week 3, Sunday Night Football into week 4. Before we get to that, I wrote a piece for The Leap today, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. And it was about really what I felt like was getting to the bottom of this game. Because when I looked at the final score, I felt like this was a game that was not nearly as close as the final score. I mean, not nearly as close as the final score indicated. And so I dug into it a little bit more. And there were 2 big reasons why I felt like this game ended up not being as close as, or being closer than the final score, because the numbers can lie. The scoreboard can and often does lie. And in this case, there were 2 things driving it: penalties and 3rd and long conversions. Situationally, the Packers got a little bit unlucky, and the 49ers were awesome. 7 of 11 on 3rd downs. Let's start with the baseline, though. The performance that the Packers put together, okay? They hold the 49ers rushing offense to 3.2 yards a carry. This was supposed to be a game where the Packers were going to get trucked. They were going to get run over by this 49ers rushing attack. Trey Sermon, it didn't matter. It didn't matter who was going to be back there. They were going to get run over. Trent Williams and Alex Mack and this offensive line, plus Kyle Shanahan, George Kittle, all these guys, they were going to do what they've been doing to the Packers for years, right? Nah, it's really not years, but that's how it feels because of how 2019 went. The Packers' run defense was excellent. Pass rush, they blitzed more aggressively. They hit Jimmy Garoppolo 11 times in this game. They held him to 6.4 yards per attempt, and they forced him into 2 turnovers. Devondre Campbell almost had another interception, and this was a game where Green Bay, it felt like, could have forced 3 or 4 turnovers. They held the 49ers to 4.6 yards per play. The Packers, on the other hand, put up 6 yards per play. That gap, 1.4 net yards per play. Net yards is one of those stats that I love, that is an indicator for how good a team is and how good a team is going to be moving forward. Net yards per play. This is long held as one of the gold standards in gambling, for example. You want to figure out how good a team really is, look at net yards per play. 1.4 net yards per play is a huge number. Last year, the best team in the league had a net yard per play average of 1. So 1.4 would have been the best mark in the league. The Packers were play to play extremely, extremely good in this game on both sides of the ball. But here's what happened. The 49ers converted 7 of 11, as I mentioned. They converted a 3rd and 4 on a 4-yard pass to Deebo Samuel that Darnell Savage almost not only broke up but intercepted. They had a 3rd and 5 by a penalty in the red zone on an incomplete pass that Eric Stokes, I don't need to relitigate this. I did not think it was a very good call, but I understand why it was called. Tough call on Eric Stokes. 3rd and 5 sets up the touchdown at the end of the first half. A penalty that extended a drive set up a touchdown that would have been a stop. They had a 3rd and 5, and it ends up being a touchdown. They had a 3rd and goal, ends up being a touchdown. Now in the second half, 3rd and 9, they get a 16-yard play to Deebo Samuel. 3rd and 8, they get an 8-yard touchdown to Brandon Ayuk. 3rd and 14, a phantom DPI call by penalty. That drive ends in a touchdown. 3rd and 10, they get a 39-yard pass to George Kittle. 3rd and 10, they get a 12-yard pass to Deebo Samuel. Those are both on the final drive for the 49ers of the game. And you just aren't going to win games converting 3rd and 8 or more. 5 of their 7 third down conversions were 3rd and 8 or better. And one of them was by penalty. They got another 3rd down conversion by penalty. That means 6 of their 7 conversions were either by penalty or in 3rd and long situations. We talked about this a little bit last week with the offense. I said, not everything is fixed because they converted some 3rd and longs. Those things are just not sustainable. They had some penalties, just not sustainable. You cannot win that way regularly. So to me, defensively, you're going to look at the scoreboard, 28 points. That's a lot. Couldn't get stops when they needed them. That's a bummer. Situationally, couldn't keep the 49ers from scoring in the red zone. Penalties were a big factor. 3rd and long. And 3rd and long plays where they had Jimmy Garoppolo done. I mean, that Deebo Samuel conversion. They have Kenny Clark has him dead to rights, is about to take his head off. Jimmy G makes a nice play to Deebo Samuel, who makes a contested catch over Jair Alexander. The 3rd and 8 in the red zone. They've got a 7-man pressure against a 7-man protection. Joe Barry brings Oren Burks off the backside. He is running free. 7-man pressure versus 7-man protection. You should have that blocked up. They get a free runner at the quarterback, and Jimmy G stares down the barrel of the proverbial gun and makes the throw on the 7 route to the corner and in front of Jair Alexander. You've got your best corner. I mean, this is the best case scenario for your defense. You create pressure, you get a free runner at the quarterback on 3rd down, and you make the quarterback throw at your best defensive player, your best cornerback. He can't make the play. Brandon Ayuk runs a spectacular route. It is a terrific play for Jimmy G to hang in there and make a throw. But when you get pressured as much as Jimmy G did, you're going to make mistakes. The interception, the fumble, the near other interception to Devondre Campbell on 3rd and 1. The Packers disguise pre-snap, double A gap blitz look. Jimmy G thinks they're coming. They back out of it, but he immediately feels Rashawn Gary off the edge because he wins to the corner. He gets the ball out faster than he wants to. It goes right to Devondre Campbell. He's got to jump up a little bit. I'm sure he would tell you he needs to make the catch. It would have been a very nice play if he made it, but it was an incomplete pass, and the 49ers have to punt. There were 2 3rd and shorts at least where I was like, why are the 49ers not going for this? I don't understand it, but they didn't. I'm not going to argue. God bless them. Kyle Shanahan, you do you, guy. I thought Trey Lance could have played more, especially in those 3rd, 4th down situations. Like, that's what you have him for. Why are you not using him? I don't quite understand why that's happening. But look, not my fault, not my thing, not my show. You can go listen to Locked On 49ers for that. Not my chair, not my problem. That's what I say. No way. No way. So Green Bay, I thought defensively they played better than the final numbers will indicate. Now, does that mean everything is fixed? No. There were still issues in coverage. There were still too many times when the 4-man rush did not get home. I appreciated the willingness to show pressure and show different kinds of looks, to show 6-man pressure and rush 4, to create free rushers in the blitzing game. And on 3rd down, Joe Barry, he heated them up. I think this pass rush is going to get better. I thought TJ Slayton did some nice things in this game in some limited snaps. I thought Tyler Lancaster had his best game of the season by far. And Devondre Campbell has been steady. I was critical of Campbell in the first game. He looked slow. And he has been really good since especially the second half of that Lions game. He was terrific on Sunday night. And Darnell Savage made the most plays that we've seen him make in a game this season. He was flying around the field. And so against a team that is not as well schooled, not as well designed, not as well coached, not as well called as the 49ers, that doesn't have as good a blocking as the 49ers. This was one of the best pass blocking offensive lines in the league to start the season, and was very good last year when they were healthy. You're gonna be able to make a little bit more hay, right? Now, can they be an elite group? We'll see about that. Now, the good news for the Packers is they are touchdown favorites at home against the Pittsburgh Steelers this weekend. A team that offensively has shown no ability to push the ball down the field, has shown no ability to run the ball effectively, has shown no ability to block for Ben Roethlisberger, and is coming off a game that they lost to Joe Burrow and Zach Taylor. Zach Taylor, I think he's one of the 3 or 4, maybe 5 least competent coaches in the league. I don't know what is going on over there, and they dominated the Pittsburgh Steelers. Najee Harris, 19 targets on Sunday. 19 targets for a running back. 19 targets. Yeah, he had 100 yards. 19 targets. I mean, he averaged like 7 yards a catch. Okay, great. Congratulations. Those are tight end numbers, and bad tight end numbers. Tight ends that get 19 targets, they usually produce a lot more than that. That's Darren Waller. That's Travis Kelce. That's Rob Gronkowski in his prime. This offense, I think, is a very good opportunity for this Packers defense to continue to make strides. We've seen incremental progress. Week 1, disaster. Maybe should have played in the preseason a little bit, learning a new defense. Week 2, okay, bad start. And then you get into the second half, they start to feel it. And then week 3, this defense, I thought really started to tune it up. They're hitting the details a little bit better. They're communicating a little bit better. Joe Barry is calibrating his aggressiveness a little bit better. And I think you're starting to see a team that is figuring it out to a certain extent. All right, guys, this is an important thing I want to tell you about. I moved out of the city and I live in the suburbs now. And that means I'm driving a lot more. And that means I have to get gas. And I have figured out that I know where the expensive places to get the gas are, and I know where the cheap places to get the gas are. And I'm going to go find the places that are a little bit cheaper. Well, right now, my listeners, they're making 25 cents for every gallon of gas every time they fill up because they've downloaded the Get Upside app in the App Store. Use the promo code touchdown and get a bonus 25 cents per gallon on your first fill up. That's 50 cents cash back. Don't pay full price at the pump anymore. Get cash back using Get Upside. Just download the app for free and use promo code touchdown to get 50 cents a gallon cash back on your first tank. And you can get your money out, PayPal, bank account, e-card, Amazon gift card. Just download the free Get Upside app and use promo code touchdown. Today's episode is also brought to you by our friends at Bet Online. They are back and better than ever. All eyes on the gridiron. Right now, football is king. It continues to be king. And as always, Bet Online is your number one spot for all the pro and college action this season with the new updated site and interface, even more odds, props, and contests. BetOnline.ag continues to be your number one source for everything football. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today to receive a free 100% welcome bonus. Not just free, they double your money. You put money in, use the promo code Locked On, they will double it. Football, basketball, boxing, casino games. You could have wagered on the Ryder Cup over the weekend. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your sports action when you use that promo code Locked On. All right, it is time now to bring in America's guest and my partner over at The Leap, Jason Hirschhorn. Jason, it is great to have you on. The first time you have been on video, it is good to see you. We don't normally do this face-to-face, so it is actually genuinely great to see you.
Yeah, you've always said that I'm too pretty to be next to you in a video. It would be
That's right.
distracting for your listeners. And you want to give them all the best content that covers the Packers in the NFL. You don't want all of these other things distracting them. But, it's 2021. Video is a part of our job, and that's why we're doing this.
I thought the time is now. I need the boost. I need the clicks here that your beautiful face will bring. And so here you are. Thank you very much for allowing me to objectify you in this way. Let me further objectify you this time for your football knowledge. as we come off of the thrilling Sunday night game, Packers and 49ers. And, we could talk about the ending of the game in a little bit. What I thought was really interesting is the way that the Packers attacked this 49ers team. I said going into the game, be yourself. They didn't really do that, and they still found success. You brought up something to me before we came on here that I thought was really interesting that you noticed about this offense. What was it?
Well, when we were discussing not just what that game would look like for the Leap, but sort of what we could expect from this team, this offense moving forward, we in terms of variations of those LaFleur, Shanahan, McVay concepts. But then you look at the way that game unfolded, that the way that the game was called from LaFleur's perspective, that was not a Shanahan game. That was not a LaFleur game. And I don't mean this is a bad thing. This is a way in which LaFleur and his coaching staff really adapted their approach for the personnel that they had and maybe adapted it for the defense that they were going to face. Part of the reason that the Shanahan offense has become so popular around the league is because of the way that it attacks cover 3 defenses. But the Packers seen a lot of that this season. They've seen a lot of teams dropping into too high, try to take away that deep ball and dare them to run or play the quick game. And those are things that, the run is out of the Shanahan offense, but in this way, it was very different. We saw empty, and Matt LaFleur uses empty normally, but not to that degree. And he spammed RPOs in a way that he does not normally do, all of which seem to be to get the ball out of Rodgers' hands before that pass rush could get there, before that compromised offensive line could give way. And given those terms, that's just really smart, even if it's well outside of what they normally do. And, looking forward, it doesn't just provide evidence that this coaching staff can adapt as the NFL adapts to them, but also that even as injuries come and go, that they're going to be able to adapt really well to their personnel. And I thought from that perspective, from the offensive perspective, it was a very well-coached game for the Packers.
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting is you look at some of these other coaches, right? So Sean McVay, he has Jared Goff, and they go heavy play action, and it's shots and layups, right? And then Kyle Shanahan, he's got Jimmy Garoppolo. They're running this same sort of version of it with a limited quarterback, and both guys go out and get quarterbacks who can play the game a little bit differently. In Stafford's case, it's drop back. We saw against the Buccaneers, they did not go heavy play action in that game. This was not the let's play a bunch of 12 personnel and try and create that way. This was shotgun and let Matthew Stafford go cook. We don't know quite what the offense with Trey Lance is going to look like, but we think it's going to mean a lot more quarterback runs, a lot more shots down the field, and it is a different way to play. They understand that this is going to require some of those changes, and the Packers making changes that really play to a lot of Aaron Rodgers' strengths. I wonder, though, when you look at the way that, let's say, a team like Tampa wants to attack them, and when they're able to create pressure, when they're able to get pressure with 4 especially, do you think these kinds of changes, the go to empty, because they did that in the NFC Championship game too, and they struggled to get that front blocked. Are they going to need more counters than this to beat a team like the Rams this season, the Buccaneers this season?
Yeah, I think the answer to that is yes, because when you go as much empty as the Packers did, usually that ends up with the defense really going into zone and sitting on those routes to take those quick passes away. If you look at the Bears game this same weekend, they went to a lot of empty too, and that's the way that they were defended. That's why that offense had one of the worst days in recent NFL history. So it's not just that going to empty automatically cures that issue, just going to quick game and those quick RPO passes. It is the way that you implement those things, because the Packers didn't use much play action at all. I think it was single-digit play action, like true play action drops. That's extremely rare for that offense. But they didn't just do the same quick game. They didn't just do the same little nuances. They were running real deep shots off of that, kind of quick game look. They didn't do that very often, but it was sort of like a counter to what they figured the 49ers were going to do. And obviously they were attacking the weakness of that 49ers defense that really, really beat up secondary. That may not be the case with the Rams or with the Buccaneers. But yeah, it is going to require more adjustments, because if you just go to empty and you just try to go to quick game, there is a pretty clear response that NFL defense have to that. And so this is the first evolution of what LaFleur is going to have to do with that offense, and there's going to, but that's the case in any season. And it is, again, a good indication that LaFleur and his coaching staff are able to make those adjustments in this instance.
And that they have the personnel to do it, because it's one thing for the coaches to say, oh yeah, we know how to counter this. And it's another thing for the players to be in a position to actually make those plays work. We saw Marquez Valdes-Scantling get more involved, Alan Lazard get more involved almost by necessity because of the mismatches they were able to create. Let's flip sides of the ball here, Jason. I thought there were some promising things from Joe Barry. I liked the aggressiveness. He was a lot more mysterious in pre-snap disguises. I thought brought more pressure. What did you see from Joe Barry in this game?
The bringing more pressure was probably the most noticeable difference. We saw that in week 2 during the second half. That seemed to be the big adjustment that they made and brought that into this game. What I think, though, is still ultimately concerning is the Packers offense spotted them basically at halftime with a 17-point lead. And obviously the kick return that set up that touchdown is not Joe Barry's fault. That's a special teams issue. That's something the Packers are probably going to have to deal with most of the year, but that you cannot put on Barry. However, you still spot them with a double-digit lead going half, and they completely ruined that. It wasn't over a single possession, but you saw that the 49ers figured something out. They figured out a way to move the ball, and that's really problematic when you consider that the 49ers were pretty one-dimensional. The run offense was not working for them in any single way. Even the George Kittle jet sweep, which was very creative. It's a good way of trying to get one of your best players, the easier way to do it. It still was really, really hard for them to run the ball. And even with intentional offense, and even with Jimmy Garoppolo inventing new ways to move the ball, I think that's probably the most charitable way that I can put it. They were still able to find the holes in the Packers defense. And the Packers defense was able to create more pressure than they have the first 2 games. And there were breakdowns. So until we see otherwise, you have to look at this Joe Barry defense as a problem. Za'Darius Smith, presumably back, that will help things. It'll certainly help things with the pass rush. It's such a defense, especially one that does not intend to blitz very often. But those coverage breakdowns, those miscommunications are going to be something that we have to monitor pretty much the entire season. Maybe as Eric Stokes gets more experience and fewer of those breakdowns happen, that's going to help. But it's not just going to be 1 or 2 things. I mean, this is a question of, can this defense over the course of an entire game get to competent, not even great? And the expectations for the unit were much higher entering the season.
What has your impression been of Eric Stokes through 2 games here? His first game as a starter, although really, I think you can make the case against the Lions. At the very least, he was their preferred boundary corner guy in nickel. What have you seen from him through 2 games?
That's an important distinction, right? That he's been the preferred guy on the boundary for basically the last 6 quarters. And that's very good that they trust him in those situations. Now, he has that speed that's going to help with a lot of those things. And he seems to have the awareness to use the sideline to his advantage. The big problems for him right now, and this is the case for a lot of rookie corners, even extremely talented ones, is that he's over-aggressive. But you can deal with over-aggressive in the way that he is. He's over-aggressive in terms of close quarters contact. He's not over-aggressive in terms of, oh, that guy just made a cut, I need to go grab him. That was the issue with Josh Jackson. That even though that's a different kind of aggression. Yeah, even though it's a different kind of aggression, that's something that's a lot harder to coach out of those cornerbacks. Eric Stokes' issues, they still need to be corrected, but we've seen that kind of problem be corrected over the course of even a rookie season, let alone over a career. So overall, the Packers look at Eric Stokes' first 3 games, at least 2.5 games. He didn't really play that much in that first one, but I think they look at it as being very promising, and they need it to be, right? Because Kevin King was not available, and even if he is, that is not a long-term solution. Sullivan missed time with an injury. He will presumably be okay, but he's gotten dinged up before. So they don't have a lot of depth beyond those top 4 guys, and really top 3, considering that he appears to be, he's being phased out, it seems. So yeah, they need Stokes to play. They need him to play well, and they need him to play well now.
So speaking of rookies needing to play well now, the Packers offensive line on Sunday night, we knew Josh Myers going in, going to be the starter, rookie center. We knew Royce Newman going in was going to be the starter, rookie right guard. But then we get this kind of crazy report from Ian Rappaport that, Josh Nijman is going to be the starter at left tackle rather than, get a little crazy with some of the different machinations that they can get into. Move Billy Turner to left tackle. Dennis Kelly plays right tackle. Leave Billy Turner where he is. Play Dennis Kelly. How surprised were you when we let's get to the quality of the play in a second. How surprised were you when we saw that report at first?
Well, you can't say it was shocking. This was a possibility that we all considered was possible. It was not an A, I think, from the perspective of those who covered the team, because Josh Nijman has barely played in the regular season, at least not from scrimmage. That doesn't mean that he can't do those things. I mean, we saw how he played on Sunday, but Billy Turner has flipped over to left tackle. Dennis Kelly was a starting right tackle all of last year for the Tennessee Titans, a team obviously with connections to LaFleur. So that seemed to be the most logical move, is to move Billy Turner from right to the right side to the left side, bring Dennis Kelly in. And this, I mean, independent of the performance, this speaks to what the Packers think about Josh Nijman, because he came into the league as an undrafted free agent with a lot of health concerns. That was the main reason, frankly, that he was not drafted. It wasn't his athletic profile. It was not his size. It was those injury concerns. And to date, he has really developed into an NFL player. That doesn't mean that he's a starting caliber player, at least not yet. But the fact that he's made it to this point, I think, is incredibly impressive considering where he began.
When we were watching the game live, the Packers were able to get a lot of help for Josh in terms of the way that he was able to handle Nick Bosa. Mercedes Lewis had some key blocks. Big Bob Tunyon leveled him on a chip block. Alan Lazard, I would say, got in his way is the most generous way to describe what he did on the Aaron Jones touchdown. But they for the most part did not have to send a bunch of help. We talked about their ability to play out of empty. I mean, for them to say, "Hey, we're gonna play 5-man protection on the road with 2 rookie starters and 1 undrafted free agent who's really our 3rd string tackle." I thought that was a gutsy play call. And the way that I phrased it in our newsletter from Monday on the Leap was, it was gutsy because it worked. Had it not worked, it would have been a WTF situation. So just the execution of it. What were your impressions of how the offensive line played on Sunday night?
Yeah, there's a fine line between clever and stupid, right? Like, it worked, and that is going to certainly embolden them to take this approach moving forward if Elton Jenkins is not available for week 4 or beyond that. But, they mitigated the issue through play calling. And then the other thing that we have to talk about that we really haven't is they mitigated it through Aaron Rodgers, right? Like, if you even put an above average starter in that situation, that approach could still work, but it's not going to work as well as it did on Sunday. Aaron Rodgers mitigated a lot of those problems. He mitigates a lot of problems for an offense in terms of personnel. That's how good he is. Yeah, as it turns out, the reigning MVP is good at playing football. So he took a lot off the offensive line's plate. The play calling took a lot off the offensive line's plate. And yeah, they went strong left often, to get Mercedes Lewis there, to get, that wham block that you were describing from Robert Tonyan, maybe the best block I've ever seen him throw, which, it's an improving part of his game. That's certainly good to see from him. But yeah, the play calling and Rodgers were the big reasons I think this approach worked, given that Nick Bosa was across the line of scrimmage. Against other defenses, they may not have to do that even if Josh Nijman is there. But again, they looked at the opponent. They knew how that opponent was going to attack them in the trenches, and they came with a game plan that mitigated it. And it was a risky one, but you can understand, having seen the way they pulled it off, why they went with that approach.
So as we push this forward here and as we finish up, as we look at the rest of the season, you and I talked about this. I don't think it was immediately after the Lions game, but just sort of in the following days after that, we were just sort of talking and like, okay, at what point do we start to say week 1 for the Packers is just kind of some fluky stuff? I don't think we're there yet. 2 games does not prove that week 1 was just this weird thing. How close for you are we, or are we there at all?
I think we can have a nuanced version of this discussion. For the Packers offense,
no, we cannot.
I do think that you can.
It's talk radio,
I think
Jason.
You can just. You are the sports talk professional, and I am the novice here. But Look, you look at it from the perspective of the Packers offense, I think you can view those 4 quarters as an anomaly. For the Packers defense, we've seen those issues continue to crop up. So
Mm,
neither answer is definitive, but based on what we've seen from this offense over the course of the past 2 seasons and change, because this is a continuation of the LaFleur Rodgers approach, you can feel pretty good about that. Because, outside those 4 quarters and really that slow start against Detroit, they have been the offense you expect them to be, at least within the
right.
range of reasonable outcomes. The defense is a different story. And yeah, new scheme, even if it doesn't seem radically different from the one they had under Mike Pettin, you can look and see how they're doing. There is more zone. More importantly, there's less press. That's the way that they approach things from a coverage perspective. And that's going to be a big change for virtually everybody other than maybe Adrian Amos, who's played in a version of this scheme before.
Right.
But yeah, there's going to be a transition period that goes beyond even the first month of the season. But that doesn't mean that you can look at the problems and say those will eventually go away when they are more versed in that defense, when Zadarius Smith returns to the lineup. I look at this and say, yeah, some of these problems will probably get corrected, but 2 out of 9 problems is solved is not nearly enough for a team that has legitimate Super Bowl aspirations. It's certainly a legitimate Super Bowl quality offense. So I think you have to look at the defense and say this is very close to being a real trend. And it would be, frankly, a little surprising if it took some massive leap over the next 2 weeks. Not impossible, but it would be surprising. Whereas those 4 quarters against the Saints defense, from the Packers offensive perspective, they got behind early. That changes the way that you can call the game. I think that game just got away from them. If that had happened in, let's just say, week 9, I don't think there's a lot of discussion about it being like a long-term problem. It just happened to be the first thing we saw from the number 1 offense because they didn't play in the preseason. And then you extrapolate from that, at least when you're on talk radio.
And that's where we are. If only the Packers could play a decrepit, aging quarterback who looks like he does not want to throw the ball more than 10 yards down the field behind an offensive line that doesn't seem like they can block anyone. If only that could be the case, Jason. Let our listeners and our YouTube audience know where they can find more of your work, including all of the great work that you do at The Leap.
Yes. Well, The Leap, again, is the newsletter covering the Packers that I do with Peter. You can go subscribe at theleap.substack.com. You can find me on Twitter, as if you're watching on YouTube, you can see on your screen, by_JBH. I write for SBNation.com, NFL.com, freelance in a bunch of places. So come find me.
Please go find him, and you will consistently find him at The Leap and pretty regularly on Locked On Packers. Locked On Plackers, you might find him. I don't know. I don't run that podcast. Jason, thanks.
Thank you, Peter.
All right, I want to thank Jason again for joining the show. Always great to talk to our friend, Mr. America's Guest, Jason Hirschhorn. Today's episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing number of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain store to stock all the parts that you need. So why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questions and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing only the brands their warehouse happens to carry? You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home or in your pocket. So why choose to spend 30%, 50%, 100% more from a chain store or car dealership? Don't do that. Go to a family business that's been serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years and never overpay. They have the same low prices for professionals and do-it-yourselfers. Go to rockauto.com now. Check out their website. Check out the inventory. Everything your car will need, from brake lamps to tail lamps, brake parts, motor oil, everything you could possibly need, and write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know we sent you. And betting on the Packers doesn't have to be a guessing game if you listen to the new Locked On Bets podcast hosted by your boy Q and handicapping expert Lee Sterling. Get daily picks, blowout specials, wrong team favored picks, and Lee Sterling's lock of the day. Follow the Locked On Bets podcast, brought to you by betonline.ag, wherever you get podcasts. All right, we're going to be back tomorrow. Lily Zhao here for everyone's favorite game. How you doing? We have our crossover Thursday. My buddy Chris Carter will be here from Locked On Steelers, and we will be live again on Friday. Live show. You guys came out in droves. You came out in droves for the live show. And guess what? Not a primetime game, but you guys love this thing so much we are going to go live after Packers Steelers on Sunday night because there's going to be a gap between that and Sunday Night Football. You're not going to miss anything. I'm not going to miss anything. So we're going to go live after the game, Packers Steelers, Locked On Packers YouTube. Go subscribe there. And I also just want to say, I want to thank everyone for being a part of the Locked On Packers community and making Locked On Packers your first listen in the morning. And I appreciate there are so many people who start their day with Locked On Packers. Make us your first listen. If you don't, hey, look, Locked On Packers goes great with a cup of coffee, maybe a bagel. I love a peanut butter toast. I've been doing toad in the hole, the bread with the egg in there. Locked On Packers goes great with there. So first listen. Appreciate all of you that make Locked On Packers your first listen. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers. And anytime you want to hit us up on the Locked On Packers fan hotline, you can do that, 920-341-3775 to stay Locked On Packers. Subscribe to The Leap.